Hi there, I'm Joe Ty from Values Coach, and welcome to this webinar on our Culture of Ownership Leadership Academy, including my response to some of the most frequently asked questions about the Academy. First of all, our purpose at Values Coach is transforming people through the power of values and then transforming organizations through the power of those values-guided people. And one of our guiding insights is this: culture does not change unless and until people change. And that is the hard work of creating a new mindset to achieve new results. One of the CEOs of a client organization, Paul Udemark in Nebraska, said, "I got a whole new team and didn't have to change the people because they changed themselves." And I see that as the gold standard of culture change. You don't have to change the people, you have to have the people change themselves. And in the Culture of Ownership Leadership Academy, what we do is we prepare a core group of certified values trainers that will help your people do a better job of being their best selves and achieving their most important goals, which in turn helps you build a more positive, more productive culture of ownership because people are thinking like partners and not just hired hands there for the paycheck. They have this proceed until apprehended mindset because being a real leader does not require a management title. It is a choice that an individual makes. Now, who should attend the Culture of Ownership Leadership Academy? We really have four categories of attendees. And first are people who are primarily interested in their own personal development. And they're going to informally share what they learn with colleagues, with family members, with their community, but they're really there for themselves personally. The second category are people from organizations that are already doing the 12 Core Action Values course that I'll talk about, already engaged in building a culture of ownership, but they want to send their current certified values trainers back for a refresher course, or they need to add to that core group by having more people trained, so they'll send new people to the training. The third is an organization that has looked into it and is ready to make the commitment to build a culture of ownership, to adopt the 12 core action values, and they're going to send a whole team to the academy so that they can be trained and prepared and go back to their organization and start the launch. And then finally, we will have people there who are coming from an organization, often a larger organization, that is looking into this. They're not sure they want to do it. They're not sure what's involved. So they'll send one or two, and I recommend at least two, people to check it out, to go through the course themselves, to talk to other people who have already been through the course and see if it's the right thing for their organization. So a story. Midland Memorial Hospital in West Texas, late in 2012, they opened a brand new, gorgeous $176 million hospital facility. One of the most beautiful and functional hospitals I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of them. And what do you think happened to patient satisfaction? It went down dramatically. And why? Because they opened this beautiful new hospital facility with a great visible architecture, and then they moved in the same old invisible architecture, the construct we use where the foundation is core values, the superstructure is corporate culture, and the interior finish is attitude in the workplace. And the gap between new and higher expectations created by that visible architecture and the same old invisible architecture got even bigger, and people reflected it by saying, "I'm not satisfied with the care and the treatment that I'm receiving." And Midland Memorial Hospital made a substantial commitment to building a culture of ownership. And here's what happened. A year later, 1 year into the project, we did a follow-up survey of all employees, and a little more than 6 out of 10 were convinced that their workplace, their coworkers, were more positive, more fully engaged than before we started the project. And nearly 9 out of 10 said that they personally were more aware of their attitudes, the attitudes of the people around them, and that they were more fully engaged in their work. We asked people to estimate what % of all paid hours get wasted on toxic emotional negativity. And over the course of 3 surveys, the number of people saying it's less than 10% nearly doubled, and the number of people saying it's more than 20% was cut in half. And this was reflected in a dramatic improvement in a very short period of time in patient satisfaction, 10 points in less than a year, and that has continued to increase, and now month after month, Midland Memorial Hospital is experiencing record high patient satisfaction. And because people are more engaged in their work, it's being reflected in higher quality measures. A good example in the emergency department, where the department director is himself a certified values trainer, when he brought this back to his department, he got people excited, enthusiastic about it. They went from being fairly consistently in the bottom 10% on occasion, as you can see, even in the first percentile, to now fairly consistently being in the top 10%, even as high as 97, 98th percentile, better than 98% of their comparison group. We calculated the annual productivity benefit, the cultural productivity benefit, being more than $7 million a year. This means that time that used to be paid to people to complain and gossip, they are now being paid to actually talk to patients, to actually communicate between departments, to actually invest in their own personal development. And that is the underpinning of those improvements that we've seen in patient satisfaction, productivity, and clinical quality. And Midland Memorial Hospital was the first organization to be honored with the Inspired Award for Values and Culture Excellence. And here you see a group of some of their values trainers. They have more than 60. We call them spark plugs because, as their t-shirts say, that's their role, to make sparks. So let's talk about what the process is that we used at Midland Memorial Hospital and many others. Step one, we begin with a culture assessment survey. We'll work with you to tailor the questions. There's some questions we want to ask consistently so we can compare you with others. We'll help you analyze and draw conclusions, and sometimes this means we will help you take off the rose-colored glasses and see your organization as your people see it. So, for example, we might ask you in these next two slides, which is the cause and which is the effect? One question, our people reflect positive attitudes, treat others with respect, and do not engage in complaining, gossiping, and pointing fingers. This is a real example. 648 managers in a large organization, and only about half agreed, and almost nobody strongly agreed with that statement. And by the way, that is very typical, and we have seen a whole lot worse. Second question, our managers effectively deal with those negative attitudes and behaviors, and the curve is almost identical. Again, only about half agree, almost nobody strongly agrees. And the question is, what's the cause and what's the effect? And clearly the conclusion to be drawn is we have to do a better job of helping our managers effectively deal with negative attitudes and behaviors in our workplace. Step two, get everybody on the same page. One way we do that is by giving everybody a copy of the book, The Florence Prescription. They're just $5. Encourage them to read it. And what this book does is it describes 8 essential characteristics of a culture of ownership and shares ideas and strategies for how do you create that sort of a culture. We ask people to make a visible commitment by signing and posting the certificate that says, I will be emotionally positive, self-empowered, and fully engaged. And those are the 3 essential characteristics of a culture of ownership. We can produce a custom edition of the book for you with a letter from your CEO or from the entire leadership team telling people this is why we're giving you this book and this is what we hope you'll get from it. There are supporting resources on the Florence Challenge website, including a leader's implementation guide, a study guide, and a set of highlights from the book. Step 3, we often begin with the Pickle Challenge for charity because if you want to create a more positive workplace, the non-negotiable first step is to raise people's awareness of and intolerance of toxic emotional negativity, whining, complaining, talking about people behind their back. In the Pickle Pledge, this simple promise to turn every complaint into a blessing or a constructive suggestion, and to declare your area a pickle-free zone, I don't want to hear your whining and complaining, is the first step. And what we do is we challenge people to find themselves and find each other a quarter. Every time you bitch, moan, whine, or complain, you're invited to put a quarter in a jar. And then that money gets donated to charity. We at Values Coach will often match the donation. We have, over the past year, we have transformed almost 100,000 complaints into quarters, donating more than $20,000 to various charities, and in the process helping people become more aware of just how negative they are and how negative their workplace is. And we have seen the most incredible creativity. People do pickle jar decorating contests. I love the one that says, be brave enough to start a conversation that really matters instead of just whining and complaining. We're seeing people decorate hallways and offices with the Pickle Pledge. And you know, there's an awful lot of research now on triggers, on cues, on changing habits that emphasize the importance of keeping something front and center, physically visible if you really want to change behavior. At Midland Memorial Hospital, you see the pickle everywhere, including this 2,000-pound chainsaw carving at the front of the employee entrance, which is now not only a reminder to employees as they come in, it's become a tourist attraction. Step 4, we encourage people to empower themselves with the Self-Empowerment Pledge. This pledge contains 7 promises that will change your life if you take them to heart, one for each day of the week. And we encourage people every day to make this promise and make an effort to live it. And what we're seeing is people gathering in groups. They wear their wristband with each day's promise. As a group, they make the promise out loud. The big picture here is Midland Memorial Hospital. Every single day, this group meets for 14 minutes. They start with the Pickle Pledge. They all say it out loud. They do that day's promise from the Self-Empowerment Pledge out loud. If you look around the room, and I've been there quite a few times, almost nobody has to read those things. They all know it by heart, and it's had a profound impact on the organization. And as you walk around, this is the maternity unit at Midland Memorial, where the manager has had 7 beautiful banners put up along the hallways there, one for each of the 7 promises. And again, every day that group meets and they promise themselves to be responsible, accountable, determined, resilient, and positive. And then we can work with you to take our 21-module online video course on the Self-Empowerment Pledge and adapt it to your website, as they have at Midland Memorial Hospital, as shown here. And we have seen the most amazing things. We've seen people lose weight, quit smoking, get out of debt, finally write the book they've always been putting off, finally apply to nursing school or graduate school. And in fact, one person who was able to break a drug addiction, his story ended up in the Chicken Soup for the Soul book, Inspiration for Nurses. And the title of the story, Promises, the promises that he made to himself. Step 5 is we help people create a cultural blueprint. You know, you wouldn't so much as remodel a bathroom without having a detailed blueprint, but then something as important as culture we allow to evolve haphazardly and without a plan. And so we help people think through, how do we blueprint our desired culture, beginning with that foundation of core values. And your statement of values really should be the most important document in your organization, and it should be an incredibly positive, competitive resource for recruiting new people, for creating a great customer or patient experience. And we use tools like the culture mapping schematic diagram shown here to help people think through what are the specific tactics that we can use to create a culture that is more positive, that enhances loyalty or safety or quality or innovation or any of the elements in that inner ring. Step 6, really the heart and soul of this, is the 12 core action values. One commentator wrote that it's like graduate school for the 7 habits. It is a formalized, systematic approach to values-based life and leadership skills. And here's how the course works. the question I started with more than 10 years ago is, what are the values that are universal? No matter what your political opinions, religious belief, non-belief, your ethnic background, the kind of work you do, don't we all want to be more authentic? Don't we all need integrity, awareness, courage, perseverance, and faith in ourselves, faith in other people, faith in the future? And then for each value, and the first 6 values are about laying a solid foundation of personal character strength. For each value, there are 4 cornerstones. How do you put action into the value? And then for each cornerstone, we have specific actions. So for example, self-awareness, writing in a journal every day for a year, writing in a journal focused on the 12 core action values can help you be more self-aware and build self-mastery, self-belief, and self-truth. And then the second 6 values have to do with taking effective action, making a difference, making a contribution. And again, each one of those values has 4 cornerstones that put action into the value. And for each cornerstone, we have, again, tools that people can use. So for example, with vision, we have a guidebook that can help people turn a dream or a goal into what we call a memory of the future. And we teach a core group of people how to teach this course. These are some of the 60-some certified values trainers at Midland Memorial Hospital. And that group is very diverse, as we always encourage it to be. There are housekeepers, nurses, middle managers, even the chief of the medical staff engaged with this course. And they teach the course, and they have a culture of ownership training room at Midland Memorial Hospital. This is one of our values trainers, and they actually have the 12 core action values posted on the wall. And they do team teaching where they bring people in for the 2-day course, and they do, each set of trainers is able to adapt the course to make it their own, to take ownership for the course, and they teach it in their own way, which is one of the real strengths of the course. Another key insight is that organizational values really define your strategies, but it is personal values that define your culture. So another of the exercises that we do is challenging people to think about, how do these personal values, the 12 core action values, reinforce the organizational values, the values posted on the wall where they work. There are several different ways to teach the course back in your organization, and each approach has its own strengths. At Midland Memorial Hospital, it's done as a 2-day course. We have other organizations where it really works more effectively as 12 one-hour sessions, and there are some organizations where, because of scheduling, they do it both ways. And we work with you in advance to help you figure out what's going to be best for you. And one of the real strengths of this approach is that those values trainers aren't just values trainers, they become a core group of spark plugs who, not just through their classroom training, but through their example and through the way they support each other and through the way they raise expectations throughout the organization, have a ripple effect from top to bottom. We have seen people make amazing, life-changing changes as a result of going through this course. This is from the Veterans Health Administration, where almost half of the people said it was very helpful, and more than a third beyond that said, this course has been life-changing for me. The Midland Memorial Hospital has a web page for their culture of ownership, and several of the comments are, it was life-altering for my inner self, and it helps me be whatever I want to be and help other people be whatever they want to be. And then finally, the last step and sort of the culmination is when somebody has met the criteria, they are eligible to receive the Inspired Award for Values and Culture Excellence. So our next class is November 14th through the 17th, 2016. It will be held at the Kirkwood Hotel and Convention Center in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. It's very close to the Eastern Iowa Airport in Cedar Rapids, and the hotel actually has a limo service, so we will pick you up and bring you to the class. And it's a very intensive 4-day session that includes speaker skills, storytelling skills boot camp, 2 of the evenings. The investment is this. Your first 5 values trainers are $2,500 each for the 4-day course, and that includes all materials and includes meals, most meals. If you have more than 5, and for a larger organization you will, the cost per trainer goes down to $2,000 beyond the 5. There's a one-time licensing fee of $5 per FTE employee, but let me be clear about what that is. If you're just sending one person or 2 people, or if you're just coming for your own personal benefit, or if you're already engaged in sending people for refresher training, this fee does not apply. This is only for an organization that is just now starting the 12 core action values, and this is to cover the cost of ongoing support of materials and for use of that proprietary course. When you're ready, and you will not be for a while, but you can apply for the Inspired Award. Florence Prescription books are $5 a piece. It's another $1 if you want us to create a custom edition for you. And it's the same thing for the workbook. And every trainer gets a workbook on the 12 core action values, but if you want to give other employees, it's $5. So for example, if you have 1,000 employees and you want everybody to get this workbook, that would be $5,000. And then we have wristbands, Pickle free zone door hangers, proceed until apprehended banners. You saw a picture of that at the beginning, and a number of other things that are available. So let's look at some of the most frequently asked questions. And one is, can you bring this program to our organization? Well, the answer to that is yes, and we have nearly 100 times different organizations. This is, if it's a bigger organization, it often works better if I bring it to you instead of you sending people to us. The other time that it really works, as in the case of this slide, is if you have serious problems and you need someone like me to come in from the outside and say, look at this. Most of your people think that more than 20% of all paid hours get wasted on toxic emotional negativity. Are you proud of this? Are you happy with this? What are you going to do about it? And sometimes just having me come from the outside and present that to everybody has a bigger impact than if you have people come back and say, well, here's what Joe found in our culture survey. What is the role of the Certified Values Trainer, the CVT? And it's really, as I said, twofold. One is teaching the course and working with your leadership team on that cultural blueprint. But 2 is through their example and through their work as a group, setting a tone for the whole rest of the organization. How many people should we plan on? There's really not a cookie cutter for that. We do have a rule of thumb that depending upon the size of your organization, and we've worked with 100 or so to many thousands, somewhere between 1 trainer for every 25 to, say, 250 employees. Again, depending upon how you're going to teach the program, depending upon the size of your organization. It is my suggestion that you have too many trainers rather than too few, because they can support each other, they can fill in for each other. You're inevitably going to have some turnover, and if you have a few extra people, it just adds to that critical mass. What's the selection process? And again, there's not a cookie cutter. We do have a recommended application form and process, but there are different ways to approach it, and we can help you work through that. What happens if you have too many people apply and you can't accept everybody? Well, that's a good problem to have, first of all. But you want to think about what are some other things you can have them do. You don't want someone to apply and just tell them no. So you tell them, well, you know, we're oversubscribed for now. Maybe the next cohort we can bring in. But why don't you do this? And give them something else to do. This is a really important question. What's our philosophy for training trainers, and how do they conduct the training? We do not have a cookie cutter. We do not give people a script and say you have to stand in front of the room and read this script exactly as is. What we do is we teach them the underpinning principles and philosophies of the course. We give them a workbook. We give them key points that we want to see made. We give them icebreaker videos that they can use. We give them PowerPoint slides, encourage them to adapt it and make it their own. But what we have found is that when people do that, when they really make the course their own, they put in their own stories, they put in their own pictures, they make it their own, they do a much better job of connecting with their training audience than if they're just standing there reading a script that I have written. Now, that's the real strength of the course. It can be the weakness of the course as well. If somebody is not willing to take the time and prepare, then it's a problem. We really don't see that very often, especially if we've done a good job in selecting the trainers. A related question, how do we assure quality of the performance? Well, we have a post-course evaluation form that students can fill out. We use SurveyMonkey for that, or the organization may have its own method. But what we find is that there's a great deal of peer review, that trainers who are working together in groups will pull somebody aside and say, you know, you really weren't prepared for that, or here, have you thought about this? And that it really becomes a self-correcting mechanism. What can we at Values Coach do to continue supporting trainers after the course is over? And that's a couple things. We have the Values Trainer website, which is just for trainers and has a considerable treasury of resources, PowerPoint presentations, icebreaker videos, suggested training exercises. We have a monthly teleconference and or webinar to keep people up to date. We sign them up for our Sparkplug newsletter, and we're always available by telephone and by email for ongoing consulting support and to answer any questions. What sort of people make the best trainers? And there's not a cookie cutter answer to that. I have seen people who told me they were scared to death to speak in front of a room who knocked it out of the park. I've seen outstanding housekeepers just rivet an audience. There's really not an answer to that other than that they believe in the course, they've seen it work in their own lives, and they're passionate about sharing it with other people. Question we hear fairly often, should we let managers become trainers? If there's a manager in the room, will they cause other people to not want to participate? I have never seen that happen. There is, by the end of the second day, it's a level playing field. Nobody cares what your title is, and I strongly encourage you to have managers engaged as trainers for several reasons. One, it sets a great example. It sends a message, this is not something that we're passing down to you. This is something that we're engaged in and committed to. And two is it allows managers to be aware of how people are taking the course. And it sends a message that we're all in the same boat here. We're all pulling on the oars together. What's the ideal class size for a course on the 12 core action values? You know, I'd say that anything much less than about 10 or 12, you start to lose energy. And in a small organization, you might want to wait until you have that critical mass. And anything more than about 40, you start to lose the ability to have interaction. So that's the sweet spot, somewhere between 10 to 15 and 40 to 50. That's really the sweet spot. Now, in an organization that's got many thousands of people, you have to figure out other ways to approach that. Should the training be mandatory, or is it okay for it to be voluntary? This is a question that I have changed my opinion on over the years. 10 years ago, I would have said, oh, make it voluntary. And now I've flipped that 180 degrees, and I'll tell you why, for two reasons. One, if you make it voluntary, the people who are most likely to opt out are the people who could most benefit from the course. They tend to be the people who are already the most negative, the biggest problems. And if they would go through the course, it would help them be better people, better parents, better employees. But if they don't go through it, they're going to be critical of something they don't even know what it is. And I can't tell you how many times I have seen this myself and heard from other trainers that they've seen it. On the first day of a course, somebody's sitting there with their arms crossed and a scowl on their face. And by the end of the second day, they're totally turned around. And in some cases, some of those people have actually gone on to become values trainers themselves. The second reason that I encourage it to be something mandatory is if this is something you are doing to create a culture of ownership and you allow people to opt out of it because they don't want to do it or they don't have time, then you really won't have a culture of ownership. What you end up with is a culture of optionality. How do you include new employees? Well, the first thing I'd say is it is essential that you do so. Otherwise, it ends up being a program of the month. And if you make it a part of new employee orientation, of that new employee experience, then over time, more and more people come in and they just from day one expect this is who we are, this is how we behave. At Midland Memorial Hospital, they added 2 days to their new employee experience. And those 2 days are devoted to having the 12 Core Action Values course be taught by their certified values trainers. I was at Midland Memorial Hospital myself recently and met somebody who had just joined their facilities and maintenance department. He had been laid off from his job in the oil fields, took a job at Midland just to make ends meet. And at the end of the second day, he asked himself, why would I ever work anywhere else? This is an organization that really takes values seriously. I want to be a part of this. How do we measure the impact of our participation? Well, I showed you the culture assessment survey that we've done 3 times at Midland Memorial and how we were able to gauge what are the changes. You look at quality. There are a number of ways that we can look at that. What's included in the academy? We have 2 evening boot camp sessions on speaking and storytelling skills. You know, so many people say that their biggest fear is speaking in front of a group, and there are a lot of things that we can do to help people who believe in the course do a better job of sharing that belief. Wouldn't it be more efficient for us to offer this as an online course? You bet, absolutely. It would also be much less effective. A big part of the impact of this course is the human-to-human interaction. We do have and will have more online resources to help our trainers be more effective, but the single best way for you to infiltrate this course, these values into your organization, is person to person with your own spark plug values trainers. Next question I get asked a lot, is this program just for hospitals? No, we have worked with organizations ranging from agriculture to manufacturing to insurance. Our core market has been hospitals simply because that's my background and that's an industry that I know best. If you're outside of healthcare and you're interested in this, well, give us a call and we'll talk about whether or not we have a fit there. What's included in the licensing fee? As I mentioned, that's the 12 core action values primarily. So, if you're intrigued by what I've told you so far, if you'd like additional information, if you'd like to come join us in November for the Culture of Ownership Leadership Academy, give us a call at Values Coach at 319-624-3889 or send Michelle Arduzer, our Director of Client Services, an email, michelle@valuescoach.com. And I will look forward to seeing you there. Thank you for listening.